Welcome to the Recharge Zone podcast. I'm your host, Brent Doty, joined with my co-host, Ann-Margaret. Hi, Ann-Margaret.
Hi.
And this is our final episode for 2024. We've gone through 6 wonderful episodes so far, and so today we thought we'd do some highlights and maybe some lowlights that we experienced throughout the year, starting with maybe a low light, which is the ongoing drought that we're facing.
Yes, Brent. So can you share with us, I know in our most recent December board meeting, Paul Bertetti shared the Aquifer Conditions Report. Can you give us kind of just an overview of the drought as it currently stands, and I guess in comparison to the drought of record?
Absolutely. So, in short, this drought is unlike any other drought that we've faced in recorded history. So we all refer to this drought of record, and that refers to this 10-year drought that we experienced in the 1950s, culminating in the springs going dry for 6 months in 1956, some of the hottest and driest times on record, up until this drought. This drought kind of over the last 2.5 years has been more intense than that drought in the 1950s. So shorter duration, but higher intensity, resulting in very low spring flows and very low water levels in our index wells in J17 and J27. So although this drought's duration has been much shorter because it's hotter and drier, the intensity has been higher, therefore water levels have dropped faster. So we're starting off 2025 at an extremely low level. We're currently in stage 4 out of 5.
And that's specifically for the San Antonio pool because the Uvalde pool is already in stage 5. But never in history will we have ever been in stage 5 for the San Antonio pool.
Yes, and unless we get some spring rainfall, we're looking at a stage 5 scenario. So it's really critical now that folks conserve water, that everyone understands the situation, and that we try our best to maintain spring flows. Now, of course, the EAA has a lot of measures in place. We have spring flow protection measures where we reduce pumping. We have conservation programs through the habitat conservation plans, such as voluntary irrigation suspension, ASR leasing, spring flow protection measures, but all these things together cannot overcome, the ultimate forces of nature. If this drought persists and we get a hot and dry summer, it's going to be an extreme challenge for us. So I encourage, everyone to recognize that we're in this severe drought and to practice conservation measures accordingly.
Yes, I feel like during drought and year round, if you can make an effort to conserve water in and around your home, it can just make the biggest impact, especially I would say probably for lawn watering, right?
Yeah, if you look at domestic use, so that's water in our homes, certainly the greatest amount of use is in the yard. It's watering grass. Everyone wants a nice green lawn, but if we're having a hot and dry summer, I hope it becomes the thing to maybe have a brown yard.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
And that kind of gets to some of the research that y'all are doing at the Field Research Park. When you think about lawns and gardening, and you think Texas native plants and probably soil restoration and those types of things. So can you share with us some of the highlights of the research that y'all have done at the FRP?
Yeah, I'm glad to mention the Field Research Park because really the goal of the research park is to study land management in a way that will make the landscape more resilient to drought. So if we're working on how to use nature-based solutions, this is how to use brush berms and berm and swales and other land management features to slow down and spread rainfall as it falls, give it time to soak into the ground and build that soil profile, adding more water holding capacity to the landscape. We're looking at ways of enhancing that factor of the aquifer. So that's going to make, like I said, the landscape a little more resilient to these dry times. Maybe that water will stay in there longer and recharge longer. So it's all about studying the possible benefits of land management and putting numbers to that, so quantifying those benefits. So there's a lot of literature out there with qualitative evidence that suggests, land management can be beneficial to the landscape, but we're actually putting sensors and doing geophysics and collecting evaporation transpiration readings, all to put some actual hard numbers, some science behind the practice.
And I never thought about soil health or soil restoration until you all started doing this, different types of nature-based solutions that have been around for what is it, like probably hundreds of years, that are more practical things that people can do, right?
Yeah, exactly. If you look at landscapes, not only in Texas but across the world, the biggest thing that we've noticed changes over the last hundreds of years is soil loss. We've lost soil due to, just development, due to agriculture activities, due to brush clearing, and soil has been lost over time. And we've sort of taken for granted what the soil does for the landscape. It's the first thing the water hits. It has water holding capacity. It has carbon sequestration abilities. It has a lot of things that could be beneficial to the system. So if we can build that soil profile and sort of restore that soil to what it maybe was natively, we probably make the aquifer system more resilient to drought.
That leads us kind of to our next noteworthy initiative. When you talk about soil health and soil restoration, you can't do those things unless you're protecting the land, right?
Exactly. And I know kind of what you're going at. And over the past couple of years, we worked out a deal where a Fortune 500 company, Microsoft, donated money to the Edwards Aquifer Conservancy for conservation. And that money was used to acquire a very valuable property conservation easement in Comal County called the Dissinger Ranch. So the Dissinger Ranch is a 600-acre property over the recharge zone in Comal County, and it was added to the EAC for the protection of the aquifer. And it's an amazing property because while there was a lot of funding for properties over the city's recharge zone and west of there wasn't a lot of funding east of the San Antonio, so in Comal and Hays County. So to get a 600-acre property in Comal County was pretty amazing. The owners, Barbara and Les, are very conservation minded. In fact, they put the property as a conservation easement at a sale price. So they wanted to do that to keep that property together and to keep it as a conservation piece for this region.
And that's amazing because when you protect a piece of land or a property as a conservation easement, does that mean decades after it's been designated as an easement, it will stay that way, right?
That's right. Most easements, and certainly this one, are in perpetuity, meaning for generations. So rights continue with the property.
That's amazing. That's something that's been really noteworthy. And then something that happened in October, shortly kind of after this property was acquired, is the Rooted in Texas event that we had at EAA headquarters, where we gave away about 2,000 Texas native plants that people could then take to their yard and inspire them to create a garden that has drought tolerant plants. Something that that goes hand in hand with, soil restoration and conserving water is you can have these plants that are beautiful, that don't need that much water and need minimal watering, right?
Yes, and I was just amazed at how popular the event was. I mean, there were so many people coming to get these plants, and not only because they're free, but because they're so resilient and able to withstand drought conditions in hot and dry weather we've been experiencing. So that's why they were there, and I'm so glad that so many people came and got these plants and are putting them in their yards, because while the grass may dry out, these plants are going to be vibrant even during drought.
And I'm hoping we inspired people to become, aquifer stewards in that event that we had. Going along the same lines of that event, we did offer some promo items that gave a sneak peek of our new logo, our new rebrand. So with the rebranding, and I know we had Roland, or EAA GM, and Michael De La Garza and Edward Flores of the communications and development team kind of talk about that on our previous episode. But that was kind of a hallmark moment, and I would say a pivotal moment probably in our EAA history, to rebrand based on the initiatives and things that we've had in place over the past few years, and the culminating of things like the EAA Field Research Park and the EAA Education Outreach Center, some of the things that we've done around the agency. It was time for a refresh and a rebrand.
Yeah, and I'm in a fortunate situation, I guess. I've been here for 15 years working at the EAA, and so I've been through 3 different iterations of the logo, and I agree. I felt like it was time. This past logo was great and everyone liked it, but it we've had it for more than 10 years. And we feel like we're going into a new generation here of the Edwards Aquifer Authority. So I feel like this is a prime time to have this new logo. And if you look at it, it has the subtle infinity symbol built into the EAA.
Yeah.
So it's like protecting the aquifer for infinity.
Yeah,
It's
for
really
forever,
cool.
right? And the official logo unveiling happened at the Edwards Aquifer Authority Summit, the second annual one that we had this past October. And I really liked the format. We invited constituents and people within the community and people that are directly impacted by our agency. And it was a great display of our leadership. They did a panel discussion that is actually available on our YouTube channel and our social media channels for people to watch. I would encourage people to go out there and watch it. It gave some great information and insight into the work we do as an agency.
Yeah, and at the summit, they also talked about the Edwards Aquifer Education and Outreach Center. And so you want to go over some of those highlights.
Yeah. And, it's a testament to the work that Sarah Valdez, our educator for over the past 20 years, has been doing. They saw about 75 schools which experienced a free field trip to the EOC. And, it's not just any ordinary field trip. The time that it takes to plan these out, we have volunteers from various organizations that go out there and lend their time to help with these school groups. We have things like a variety of different insects and creatures you can find locally to kind of show the nature that's in and around the Edwards Aquifer. We also have different experiments like limestone testing that kids can do. There's a nature hike, a scavenger hunt, and then as well as all of the amazing exhibits that we have in the center. So we have educated at the center about 5,000 people this year. That's in addition to the previous years. So the EOC is continuing to just make an impact in the community, and word of mouth, more and more people are hearing about it and wanting to come see and educate themselves. Something else notably that we've done at the EOC, which I think is incredible, is they have a Texas Native demonstration garden. And there's a rainwater harvesting system that they have installed there. And Sarah was telling me earlier this year that there's about 90,000 gallons of water that's collected in that system. So it's used for the gardening. So essentially it just operates on its own. No watering is required. And what the beauty of it is those are native plants. So they even probably require less water.
Oh, that's really, really cool. I would encourage anyone, if you're in town, if you plan to visit San Antonio, check out our podcast with Sarah about the Education and Outreach Center. It's a free center to learn about the aquifer. It has exhibits and the native plant garden like Ann-Margaret was talking about. So check that episode out and call them up or go on the website and sign up for a tour, or just walk in.
Yeah,
right?
Yes, absolutely. The more the merrier. And something going hand in hand with the amount of people that we became educated at the EAA EOC were the amount of people that attended our events. So there was about 1,500 people who attended various events, such as the Green Garden Wonderland that we just had, where we partnered with HEB, the EAA Summit, that Rooted in Texas event that we talked about earlier in the podcast. So all of these events and all of these people reached are hopefully stewards of the aquifer now.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, those events were really incredible. We also sponsored several events throughout the year. I know there was a bike race, there was a golf tournament. So we try to have a community presence at a lot of different things and get our name and our messaging out there.
Yeah, yes. And going hand in hand with getting our messaging out there is our News Drop publication. That is a bi-monthly publication that we disseminate digitally, and then also we have print copies that we give out at various events. But something within that news drop that we started this year, a series, is the Agriculture Out West series, which highlights irrigators throughout our jurisdiction. And I learned so much, and you can learn so much too, in the various past issues of our news drop. We visited corn farms, cotton farms, sunflower, cucumbers, and the farmers are so knowledgeable, and it's so amazing to hear about the generational farming that has happened in these families. It's like, fourth generation, fifth generation farmers. And I don't know, to me, I know you've been here for 15 years, but I feel like you can't get over the fact of how awesome that is, right?
Yeah, it's so cool. And, speaking of the news drop, I think it is the perfect visual companion to this audio podcast. So a lot of the things and a lot of the guests that we talk to on this medium are described in text and visual with photos and graphs and the news drop. So if you find a story particularly interesting on here, there's likely a companion story on the news drop.
Yes, very much
goes
so.
with it.
Yep.
So I guess to end, our highlights here are just a recap of some factoids about the Edwards Aquifer and the Edwards Aquifer Authority. So we are a state entity responsible for managing, enhancing, and protecting the Edwards Aquifer. There are about nearly 2,000 Edwards Aquifer permit holders. So these are either folks or entities that have a permit to withdraw water from the aquifer. And we manage about 572,000 acre feet of groundwater. So that is the permitted cap of groundwater in the system. So we don't allow any more pumping than that. And we try to protect the aquifer by reducing the amount of pumping that occurs during drought scenarios like we're having right now. So EIA is critically important to making sure this aquifer remains sustainable now and for future generations. And we do a lot in the community, as we've heard about today, but also with these permit holders and stakeholders throughout the region. So this is Brent and Ann-Margaret signing off for 2024 and looking forward to 2025. Happy New Year, y'all.
See y'all in the new year. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Recharge Zone podcast. Have questions, ideas for topics, or things you would like to share with us? Well, reach out to us by emailing us at rechargezone@edwardsaquifer.org.